When did the full weight of the gravity of this pandemic set in for you? When they cancelled the Olympics. So much has happened this year, I totally forgot about this. Early on, some experts were saying it wouldn't end until 40-70 or the population gets infected or vaccinated. That's when it hit home for me. I was like, wow, that's a big number. I'm a grad student studying physics. I was scheduled to go to the American Physical Society's March meeting to present my research. Starting the 1st of March, it's the biggest conference in the world of professional physicists. 10,000 people from all over the world go every year. It's a great opportunity to get noticed and see where your field is going. I had been nervously monitoring the situation for a few weeks, worrying about this new disease. They put out several notices that they were still going forward with the meeting, right up until 3 days before it when they abruptly cancelled it. I breathed a sigh of relief, even though I never got the cost of the plane ticket back. A month later I realized that the hypothesis I was going to present was utterly wrong, and have completely revised that section of my thesis to reflect our new understanding. Dodged a bullet there. I live in New York City, so seeing images of places like Times Square virtually empty, relatively, was something else. I live in a ski town. Having it snowing in March and the mountain town completely empty was so surreal. I live in a ghost town. Seeing all the usual empty spots become crowded was weird. I commute to work around lunch hour, right before shutdown was announced. Driving 20 minutes to work and seeing the interstate completely empty was different. I had just bought and renovated a bookstore and poured all my money into it and was always busy. And then having no customers the whole day was a stomach drop. Book lover here, my heart goes out to you. Every time I hear about businesses permanently closing, I think to myself, not the bookstores. Please not the bookstores. I sense that bookstores were on wobbly footing even before the pandemic, and I'd hate to lose them forever. Thank you for all the hard work I'm sure you did to create a space for readers. If your store has an online presence and can ship to the US, I will happily buy something. Sending you positive vibes from afar. When I was able to step outside and heard noises of nature all around me, no drones of airplanes, traffic, lawnmowers, etc. It was eerie. The first time I had to use an unapproved app on my phone so a family could say goodbye to my patient. It was emotional and more distant than it should have been. March. Thank you for doing this. My dad died last week, alone in the hospital, and we were unable to visit and they had no way of doing a video call. We never got to say goodbye. When I got off the train in Penn Station and it was a ghost town, it was absolutely terrifying considering Penn Station is meant to be a central location for people. I'd never been to Penn Station at all hours of the day and night, and there wasn't a bunch of people running for trains, eating, shopping, etc. Manhattan was also eerily quiet beyond some sirens. I saw videos of Chicago during lockdown that were so incredibly eerie in their silence and lack of motion. It was almost like I Am Legend, without nature taking over. When my boss called me into her office and asked me whether I could work from home, as a precaution, so that the entire department would not be paralyzed if somebody were infected. This was in March, I believe. I'm still working from home. For me it's when the whole thing kicked off. Went to Food for Less and almost everything was gone. This was at the start of the water toilet paper craze. I'll never forget this random old guy next to me say we will get past this and everything will go back to normal. Probably one of the most real moments in my life. Yeah, that first trip to the store after they announced lockdowns was genuinely surreal. Bare shelves front to back, and my partner muttering in my ear that he's glad I stocked up on canned and frozen foods in February. One of the weirdest things I will always remember, though, is walking into the soup aisle and everything was gone. Everything except asparagus and pea soup. Probably 60 cans of it untouched in the middle of entirely bare shelves. Cracked me up when I really needed it. Really makes you look at zombie apocalypse style movies with super full grocery stores and shake your head. I study in a school that's known for not canceling class. The city has been flooded. Lightning storms, blackouts, everything you can think of, and the school was still open. When they said they were switching to online learning, I knew she was going down. Eater. Almost forgot the teacher protests. Almost every single teacher in the city was protesting and the damn school was still open. How's college at home for you? My wife may never see her 94-year-old mother in person again as she lives in a city far away. Oh, that is so depressing. I feel so bad for your wife. It must be really hard. When a bunch of billionaires decided to willingly suspend the NBA season. People that process that much money don't just decide to halt ticket sales for their cash cow sports franchises without a damn good reason. I didn't exactly process it that way, but the NBA being cancelled on the 11th of March is what did it for me as well. Walmart enforcing masks where our governors won't is where I thought about the money. That was the same night Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, and Tom Hanks tested positive. That's when shit really started going down. I run past a hospital. Behind is a fenced off area for initial screening, and behind that, refrigerated trucks. Very early on, I saw a line of 7-10 gurneys, bodies wrapped, and 2 people in hazmat suits lifting a wrapped body into a truck with fog escaping. Sockle. This was late March. Pretty much from the get-go, I had just gotten to an island in the middle of the Pacific from being on a boat for a while. Borders were closing on us fast. The local government wanted all outsiders out now, and we had to make very important decisions very quickly. It felt like choosing your starting position in a zombie apocalypse or dystopian future game. But I roll. My mum is a nurse at the hospital where COVID patients are treated. She's a diabetic specialist, but the wards are so overcrowded with COVID patients she was forced to help treat them. I say treat because COVID patients are being transferred from COVID wards to normal wards. So the spread was uncontainable due to higher ups decisions. There were initially 12 patients. Yesterday they counted 97 in the space of a few days. She came home crying and writing her resignation letter because of the sheer demand and pressure she is under. She's terrified, especially being in her 40s and with my dad having diabetes, DVT, asthma and other health conditions. She's terrified and I never want to see her cry like that again. This resonates with me deeply. I'm an RN in the ER right now, and while our hospital is smaller, it is absolutely bursting at the seams. Not only are we dealing with a surge of COVID patients, but due to fear lockdowns everything is getting worse for those with chronic health conditions who are scared to leave their homes. Eventually things get bad enough and they come in. We are overrun with psych patients, drug, alcohol, and suicidal patients. Most of us are just like, right there with them. I don't have much energy to encourage them anymore. The travel nurse economy has exploded with crisis contracts. Lots of our experienced nurses are leaving to chase the cash. I can't blame them. I work alongside nurses making 3-5 times what I'm making doing the same job. What's more demoralizing than that? We are all completely exhausted and burned out. No one I work with is happy they chose this job, and me included. I feel so bad for the new nurses that were sold a lie. The demand to do more and still meet the unrealistic metrics and patient satisfaction scores the higher-ups placed on us has become so bad that I have near daily panic attacks, nausea, no sleep, and have become generally severely anxious and deeply depressed and drink daily just to cope. I have a job lined up doing manual labor and I couldn't be more happy about the second I get to send in my resignation letter. Please tell your mom she is not alone and that she's making the best decision for her mental and physical health. From one burned out nurse to another. I was a live audio engineer. I mixed concerts and events for a living. I'll never forget that weekend. We were doing one last show. I think it was the 16/17th of March. We were in Melbourne. FL tearing down a PA when my boss got the first call. Show cancelled. The other company on site had a guy getting the same phone calls. We finished tearing down, and he got another call. All events from that client cancelled. We were on our way to set up what would become our final show. 2 more phone calls. More cancellations for the year. We get to the event. We set up. The band shows up. They tell us their gigs were all completely cancelled. There goes more work. By the end of the show, we got I think 6 more phone calls for cancels. I had 1 festival left. Literally 1 3-day event left for work on my calendar for the year. I went from full calendar from March to January to just 1 festival. I denied it would get cancelled too. It was too big to cancel. I got the last phone call from the promoter. The festival got canned. From there, I had absolutely no income for the foreseeable future. Still don't. I never received a stimulus check. I wasn't eligible for unemployment. Florida, need I say more? I pay my taxes. I do things by the book. I didn't get a red cent from the government to this day. Neither did most of us live audio engineers. The gig worker economy was demolished by this virus, and the government couldn't even piss on the flames for us. Every single event or concert you have ever been to with lights, speakers, or talent, one of us is in the corner somewhere making it all happen. We bust our ass as live audio engineers so people can have fun. It's stressful, draining, long days, heavy equipment, and a lot of technical stuff, but that's what we do, and we love it, and we can't do it anytime soon, to no fault of our own. It was how I paid my bills. We are the reason you get to feel the bass, dance to the lights, and see your favorite band or artist. The entire weight of the show aside from promotion and performing is on us. Now my savings are essentially gone and I'm gripping 4D life to get bills paid and eat. I've only eaten once a day for the past couples months, trying to stretch out what's in the fridge for as long as possible. So yeah, it wasn't so much when I lost all my gigs that it hit me. It hit me when I realized I lost all my gigs and my government doesn't give a good goddamn if I live or die or starve through this. Please go to a food bank and get some help feeding yourself. Eating once a day cannot be good for you long term. I hope things turn around for you. Sounds like you've been through hell. As a cash donor to a food bank, seconding this. If you're eating one meal a day to save money, you're exactly the reason I donate. In fact, donating right now in your honor. Go get some food. I was out camping with my friends on spring break. On day 3, I get the notification that 2 NBA players, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, have contracted the coronavirus. 5 minutes after this announcement, the NBA announced the suspension of the season. My friends and I proceeded to watch the dominoes fall as everything began shutting down, postponing, and then we get an extra week of spring break. And then one of the shittiest educations we all have ever received. Early April, when a former colleague who was 28 and perfectly healthy otherwise, caught it and died. That's when I realized that it wasn't just bad flu. My Phil has it. He's a 62 years old type 2 diabetic alcoholic and former smoker. I told my 4 years old that Papa has the sickness but he's gonna be fine. But I'm not sure he will be. My son has already been to 5 funerals in the past 2 years. I really don't want it to be 6. It was a combination of things. First, I watched the crazy videos that were coming out of Wuhan, and it seemed crazy and unbelievable. Then there were the ones in Italy, but it still felt like something that was happening somewhere else and it wouldn't necessarily happen locally. But then, I started noticing the threads on Reddit that were starting to pop up out of tourism hotspots like Vegas, talking about how people were getting sick and piling up in hospitals and it wasn't yet making the papers. Stories about people feeling off their feed one day and in the ICU by the end of the week. That's when it started being like, holy sh, what's going on? Then the news stories started coming out in California. But what really sealed the deal? When my friends who work in the medical sciences started freaking out and locking down. We're talking rational, non-dramatic people who clearly believe in the power of Western medicine and statistics. The crazy stories were coming out in January, and by February, my medical sciences friends were like, F that, see you next year. They were definitely ahead of the curve. When the guy whose entire job is managing medical incident data starts refusing to go outside, you follow his lead. Today, my housemate was going to spend his Christmas vacation with his girlfriend in another state. He just told me last week and he was really excited about it. Today he came into my room and said he wasn't going. I asked him if they had a fight. He said no. She had just died of COVID. She didn't even have it last week. I just feel numb. How could this happen so fast? Every day now is fresh new gravity. The worst of times beyond anything I could have imagined. Life was so good before, and I didn't appreciate it enough. Life was so good before, and I didn't appreciate it enough. Agreed. I miss the weirdest things at the moment. The strongest one is, I miss going to stores for no reason. Just wandering around a hobby or hardware store, looking at plants in the garden section, sitting on couches I'm not going to buy, weird, frivolous things I didn't know I enjoyed so much. In March, when the WHO, World Health Organization, announced it as a pandemic, I thought to myself, oh this is really serious. I'm baffled at how people treat it now though, with millions of cases and nearly 1.5 million recorded deaths total. Stay safe. Please. Very early in the year, I teach Chinese kids on the internet. They were getting locked down and telling me they hadn't left the house in weeks, so I started following the story. I was the crazy guy in like January, telling everyone this was coming and they better pay attention and it wasn't just going to be a 2-week shutdown. Told you so. I have a couple of Chinese colleagues who were following the story very closely and were taking it extremely seriously as early as January. I actually took a cruise in mid-February, and my Chinese office mate was super anxious that I was going to come back from the cruise infected and get her sick. At that point we were all kinda rolling our eyes at her, but within 3 weeks, our whole company had gone 100% remote. I had already lost my job before the lockdown happened. The one I just before the lockdown was for a bar which got shut down at the end of March. I have a mortgage and a school-aged child and had just separated from my wife after being together for 21 years. For the first time I was truly on my own with an eye-watering amount of debt and no idea what to do. 2 times. First was driving back through Nick in April and seeing freezer trucks full of the dead. That is when I realized the extent of the pandemic on society. Second time was just the start of November, when I went through a breakup and realized that I am just cripplingly alone during this pandemic. I am a social person with social hobbies and now I rarely see or talk to anyone. I have never been closer to suicide. I'm doing slightly better this week, but that's when I realized the impact of the pandemic on my psyche and ability to connect to people. The scenes in Spain, the elderly homes that were abandoned and the army going in to collect all the dead bodies. I still get flashes all the time. It's so horrifying. The photos of those doctors with bruises around their faces and the pain in their eyes.